The first time I felt something tilt, it wasn't a fight or a confession. It was the way his phone lit the room like a lighthouse after dark, pulsing from the coffee table as if it had a heartbeat. Ryan's shoulders went tight, and his laugh halfway through a predictable sitcom fell off a cliff I couldn't see. I watched his thumb hover, then tremble, before he flipped the screen face down the way a person covers a wound. The smell of the lemon candle we always burned after dinner turned sharp, almost sour, and the TV voices sounded like a party happening in the next building over. "Everything okay?" I asked, and he said, "Yeah, too quickly," like a man closing a door on a draft. The buzz came again and again, a needy little knock. I didn't yet know whose name was hiding there, but I knew this something about home had just changed its shape. Before I go on, tell me where you're listening from tonight, and if you've ever felt a room shift like that for no obvious reason. If this kind of true-to-life story speaks to you, tap like and subscribe so more women can find their strength when the truth finally walks in. My name is Liliana, and I'm 27 years old, the oldest of 3 from a Midwestern family that believes in casseroles, birthdays on Sundays, and not leaving people behind when they're struggling. I moved to the city after college, took a solid marketing job that pays on time, and built a life the patient way, one bill at a time, one secondhand dresser, one new set of sheets when I could afford them. Ryan came into that life 3 years ago, with big eyes and bigger dreams. A guy who could make a room feel warmer just by unpacking his cables and laughing at the right places. He's a freelance sound tech, the kind of person who sees music in everything glass, rain the hum of the refrigerator at midnight. When his father got sick and the jobs dried up for a while, I held the line, picked up extra shifts, watched for discounts, said yes to the quiet nights in when the movie was free and the popcorn was the stovetop kind. We made our place pretty on a budget, and I liked the way his shoes landed by the door next to mine, the tidy row that looked like a future. The building itself is ordinary painted brick, creaky stairwell, the sort of mailboxes you have to jiggle, and somehow that made our small wins feel larger. I grew up with parents who saved every instruction manual and kept the good towels for holidays, so stability is my love language, and Ryan knew that. He told me I steadied him. He said on the nights when the worry shook him awake that I felt like the part in the song where all the noise falls away and the melody finally knows where it's going. I believed him because I wanted to, and because most days he was tender and trying, and that felt like enough. If there were differences, we wore them like a soft sweater there, but comfortable. My paycheck is a metronome. His comes in bursts, and he calls that freedom. I keep a list on the fridge of what's due by Friday. He keeps numbers in his head and faith in the next gig. When he finally landed a new path after a long patch of doubt, a series of small venues, some equipment rentals, the promise of a bigger tour tech role if someone dropped out, I celebrated like it was the lottery. We talked about rings, sometimes not in a circle of candles, just in the honest way people do when the laundry is sorted and the pasta water's boiling. We were ordinary, and I took comfort in ordinary, because ordinary done well is how you get a life. The night the phone started buzzing like that, I told myself it was a client, or a late-run sheet. People need things after hours, and sound techs live at the mercy of other people's schedules. But the way he stared at the screen told another story, and the way he swallowed told another after that. He didn't move closer to me, he moved away an inch, then 2, the way a person steps around a crack in the sidewalk. The sitcom laugh track sounded tinny, like a toy with low batteries. I tucked my feet under the throw, breathed like the therapist I saw years ago taught me slow, and slower out, and let the moment pass, because I've learned that when you force a truth, it hides. In the mornings, we still moved around each other, like we always did, me making coffee, while he checked cables and calendars, the window catching that slice of light we joked, made our kitchen look fancier than it is. He kissed my temple, and I let the warmth of his breath convince me I was imagining the distance. My mother raised me to check facts, not feelings, because feelings can be storms that drift. So I watched for facts, receipts, changes in routine, the way he reached for his phone before he reached for me. There were none I could hold in my hand yet, only the sensation of walking through a room where the furniture had shifted an inch and all the corners had become new. When I left for work that Wednesday, Mrs. Patterson from 4B stopped me in the hall with a carton of eggs and a smile that smelled faintly of lavender lotion. She asked after Ryan, asked after my parents, asked whether we were still planning to spend Thanksgiving at my aunt's. I told her yes, because that's what we had said last week, when everything still felt like the same song. As I stepped into the elevator, the door hesitated on its old tracks, and my face stared back in the scratched metal calm composed the kind of woman who doesn't borrow trouble. I admired that woman for a second. Then the doors closed, and my phone lit in my hand with a name I hadn't seen in years. I didn't open the message there between floors with the dull rattle and the stale air, but I saw enough of the preview to know the past had learned our address. The message preview on my phone glowed in that dim metal reflection, and though I hadn't opened it, the name was already enough to make my stomach tighten. Samantha. The letters carried a weight I couldn't ignore even after years of silence. The elevator jolted to the lobby, and I stepped into the crisp air with the phone pressed in my palm, the words waiting like a test I hadn't studied for. I didn't unlock the screen right then, not with traffic humming outside and strangers moving past. Still, every step toward the office felt heavier, as if those few words were already rearranging the shape of my life. That evening, the apartment was quiet, except for the low buzz of Ryan's speaker as he tuned a guitar. His back was bent, head-tilted fingers adjusting the pegs. I set my bag down and watched him searching for the man who used to smile just because I walked in. His phone lay face up on the table, and before I could stop myself, my eyes caught the glow of her name again. Samantha. I still think about us. Can we talk? My breath stalled. The room seemed to shrink around me, walls pressing closer, the candle on the counter flickering even though the air was still. I tried to keep my voice even, though I could feel it catching in my throat. She reached out. Ryan looked up slowly, guilt flickering across his face before he forced something like calm. She says she made a mistake, that therapy made her realize I was the one that got away. He said it softly, almost reverently, as though repeating a prayer, not realizing how those words were carving me open. I stood by the counter, my hands gripping the edge, as though steadying myself against a tide. 3 years together, and she could summon him back with a single text. The days that followed blurred into a new rhythm I hadn't chosen. His phone lit up at dinner, and he smiled at messages that weren't mine. He laughed quietly and the bathroom door closed, but sound traveling as surely as smoke. He left the table without clearing his plate, muttering excuses about being there for her, as though I hadn't spent years being that person for him. Even the neighbors began to notice. Mrs. Patterson from 4B stopped me in the hall, her eyes soft with concern, asking if I was all right. I smiled and said work had been hard, but the truth was, the hard part had a name, and she was back in our lives like she'd never left. It was Ethan who first broke the silence I'd wrapped around myself. His message came on a Thursday evening, just a handful of words that carried more weight than he could know, heard about what's going on. Are you okay? Ethan had always been there in the background. Ryan's friend, the one who helped us move, who made jokes at barbecues that sometimes fell flat, but always came from a kind place. For a moment, I almost didn't reply, almost kept the facade that everything was fine. But my fingers moved before I could stop them. Not really. He's basically dating her while living here. The truth looked strange in writing, raw and undeniable. That's trash behavior. You deserve better. His reply came fast, no hesitation. I stared at those words, letting them echo inside me because no one else had said them. Not Ryan, not even me. We talked more that night, first about Ryan, then about work, then about things that had nothing to do with betrayal or loss. It wasn't pity, it was presence. And when he asked almost gently if I wanted to have dinner so I wouldn't be eating alone while Ryan was out with Samantha, I found myself saying yes before fear could shut me down. The lantern had always been ours, the place where Ryan and I celebrated small wins with warm bread and copper lanterns glowing on every table. Walking in with Ethan felt like stepping into fire and ice at the same time. Monica, the waitress who knew us by name, paused when she saw us, her eyes darting to the empty seat where Ryan usually sat. "Not tonight," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She led us to that familiar window table, as though the universe was daring me to stop pretending. Halfway through appetizers, I realized I was breathing easier, laughing even while Ethan listened without glancing at his phone once. It was such a simple kindness that it stunned me. My phone buzzed relentlessly halfway through the meal. Ryan's words glared up from the screen. "Are you serious right now? At our place with him?" I turned the phone toward Ethan, who met my eyes and lifted his glass. "To clarity," he said quietly. I lifted mine too, my heart pounding, and in that moment, I knew something had shifted. Ryan had lost his grip without me raising my voice or begging for his attention. The balance had begun to change. When Ethan dropped me off, the phone kept vibrating a swarm of messages I refused to answer. I muted the thread and left it face down on the counter, a quiet act of defiance I never knew I was capable of. But peace never lasts long when someone else is determined to keep you trapped. At 10:15, the door flew open. Ryan storming in, face flushed, and behind him smiling like she owned the space was Samantha. The sight of them together in my doorway was a blow I hadn't prepared for. Ryan's voice cracked with anger as he accused me of betrayal. My best friend at the lantern, as though his endless nights with Samantha meant nothing. I stood, heart steadying itself in my chest. Bold words I said from someone who's been parading his ex through my life for weeks. Samantha's perfume hung thick in the air as she crossed her arms, telling me I was jealous, that Ethan didn't want me, only revenge. My laughter was short and bitter because the truth was too plain. "That's exactly what you're doing," I said, using Ryan to prove you can still take back what you once threw away. Her smirk faltered for the first time, and I saw the smallest crack in her performance. Ryan tried to regain ground, reminding me the apartment was his too, but I pointed to the lease on the counter, his month-to-month agreement, no shield against the truth. His eyes widened when I told him he had 30 days. He pleaded, asked where he was supposed to go. I glanced at Samantha, who shifted uncomfortably and muttered excuses about her place being complicated. For once, the silence wasn't mine. "Then maybe you can stay with her mother," I said, knowing exactly where he'd been most nights anyway. He had no answer, no escape, and I typed the words that sealed it, 30 days notice. As they stormed out, Samantha's voice dripped with spite, warning me I'd regret this, that Ethan only wanted me because he couldn't stand being second best. I met her eyes without flinching. "At least he chose me," I said softly. Their footsteps faded, the door rattled shut, and the room felt both shaken and strangely lighter. I stood there for a long time, breathing through the tremor in my hands, knowing this wasn't the end, but the beginning. Because when the door closed behind them, I understood the power of choice. And for the first time in weeks, it was mine. And yet, as I stacked the dishes from the counter and the apartment settled into silence, I knew Ryan wasn't done. Choices like his rarely end with a single slammed door. They unravel and they drag you with them if you're not careful. The morning after I gave Ryan his notice, the apartment felt like it belonged to me again, but only on the surface. Beneath the quiet was a tension that clung to the walls. He tried to make light of it by sending me an article about tenant rights, highlighting phrases about protections and squatter laws, adding a smug little note about how I couldn't just throw him out. I forwarded it to Jenna, a friend from college who now worked as a lawyer. She called within minutes, chuckling at his attempt. "You've done everything right, Liliana. If he pushes this, he'll be the one in trouble." I hung up feeling steadier, but not for long, because Ryan had never been one to let go gracefully. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Ryan had posted a photo of us from a vacation the year before, captioned, "Remember when promises meant something?" I scrolled through the comments, seeing sympathy pour in for him and quiet judgment directed at me. It was his way of twisting the story, trying to paint himself as the man abandoned without reason. Then Samantha added her part, posting a photo of her hand intertwined with his, captioned, "Sometimes fate gives you a second chance at true love." The comments turned sour quickly. People remembered her history the way she had left him once before. Some called her out, saying it wasn't love, just recycling. Even so, it stung to see my life reduced to captions and threads. By the end of the week, even his mother called. Her voice trembled when she asked if it was true I was evicting her son. I kept my words calm but honest. "He's been living here rent-free while openly dating his ex." "What choice did he leave me?" There was a long pause before she sighed. "Ryan's always chased after what he doesn't have. I'm sorry you got caught in it, dear." Her quiet admission settled heavy in my chest. Even she had seen the pattern, but her son had learned nothing from it. The following Monday, I walked into the apartment to find half my living room stripped. My Xbox was gone, along with the coffee maker, the air fryer, and even the spare phone chargers I kept in a drawer. My heart thudded with anger as I snapped photos of the empty spaces and mess he left behind. I texted him immediately, demanding my things back, threatening a police report if he didn't return them. His reply was short and smug. What things? They were ours. I pulled out the receipts, every one in my name, and sent the proof. Within an hour, the items were dumped at my door, scratched and scuffed, as though he wanted to remind me he could still leave his mark. It wasn't about the objects. It was about control, about testing whether he could still rattle me. That night, Ethan stopped by. He'd heard enough through mutual friends to know Ryan was stirring trouble. We sat at the kitchen counter with mugs of tea, and the words spilled from me before I could stop them. I told him about the posts, the lies, the way Samantha was painting herself as some tragic heroine. He listened without interrupting. His brow furrowed, his hand resting lightly over mine. "You don't deserve this," he said softly. "You carried him for years, Liliana, and this is how he thanks you. Enough." Something in me cracked, not from pain, but from relief. To hear someone say out loud what I had been too tired to believe lifted a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. In the days that followed, Ryan and Samantha clung to each other more publicly, as if their affection could drown out the whispers. I saw them once at a small concert, pressed close like teenagers. Ryan spotted me across the room, and the smirk slid off his face when he noticed Ethan beside me. His arm draped casually over the back of my chair. Samantha whispered in his ear, but her eyes stayed fixed on me, sharp and unyielding. It was then that I understood. This wasn't love for her. It was a performance, a way to prove she could still take back what she once discarded. The irony was sharp. She hadn't won anything. She had only picked up what she had thrown away. Late one night, my phone lit up with a message from Ryan, words blurred with drink. "You'll always be mine." My stomach turned, not from longing, but from disgust. For the first time since this began, I saw the truth clearly. He wasn't in love with me, or even with Samantha. He was in love with possession, with the idea that someone should always be waiting for him, no matter the damage he caused. That was a game I would never play again. By the next week, the cracks in their story grew wider. Ryan told mutual friends that I had been controlling, that I checked his phone, monitored his spending, kept him from seeing people. For a short time, some of them believed it, sending cautious messages to check if I was all right. But then, old group chats and photos began surfacing, evidence of Ryan out with friends, while I stayed home, never once complaining or keeping him from living his life. His lies didn't hold, and the silence from those who had once rallied behind him was louder than any defense I could have made. Samantha tried next. She posted a photo of her leaning into Ryan at a cafe captioned, "Finally with my soulmate." 3 years of settling taught me what love really isn't. Within an hour, the comments unraveled it. People remembered the past, reminded her that she had been the one to leave, that she had stepped back into his life only after seeing he had built another. By the time I looked again, the post was gone, deleted, but screenshots were already in circulation. No amount of polish could make the cracks disappear. It all left me tired, drained, in a way that lingered beneath the skin. Nights alone in the apartment felt too quiet, as though the silence itself accused me. I moved carefully through each day, carrying myself through work and errands, keeping my voice steady when people asked how I was holding up. But at home, in the still hours, the weight of everything pressed down, and sometimes I found myself sitting on the couch long after midnight, staring at the empty space where Ryan used to leave his shoes. I didn't want him back. I just wanted to understand how love could slip into something so unrecognizable without me seeing it happen. Through all of it, Ethan stayed. He didn't hover or push, but he was present, and his presence mattered more than I could say. When I needed to vent, he listened. When I tried to distract myself with small talk, he joined in. He didn't treat me like someone broken. He treated me like someone worth standing beside, and that steadiness helped me find pieces of myself I thought I had lost. Still, I knew this wasn't the end. People like Ryan and Samantha didn't fade quietly. They pushed harder when they felt their grip slipping. And as much as I longed for peace, I could feel something building, waiting for the right moment to break open. It wasn't fear that kept me awake at night anymore. It was the certainty that they weren't finished, and neither was I. The invitation to Mark Hanley's birthday party arrived tucked into a group message, the kind you could easily ignore. I almost did. I didn't want to walk into a room filled with Ryan's friends' faces that might have already heard his side of the story. But Ethan caught me hesitating. His voice steady when he said, "You can't hide forever, Liliana. You've got nothing to be ashamed of." He was right, and something in his calm pushed me toward the decision. By the end of the week, I had chosen a simple dress, one I hadn't worn in months, and told myself it was time to stand without flinching. When we walked through the doors that Saturday night, the music was loud enough to cover the shift in the room, but I felt it anyway. Conversations paused for just a second, glasses hovered midair, and then the rhythm resumed, though softer, cautious. Ryan and Samantha were already there, linked arm in arm, the picture of practiced happiness. Samantha's laughter rang too loudly, the kind that begged for an audience, and Ryan clung to her as though she were a shield. I let Ethan lead me toward the drinks table, his hand light at the small of my back, a quiet gesture that steadied me in a way I hadn't expected. Halfway through the night, Samantha found me near the table, stacked with glasses and bowls of ice. Her smile was wide, but her words carried a bite. "Enjoying your little rebound with Ethan?" she asked, her tone dripping with sweetness that didn't match her eyes. I looked at her steadily. "Enjoying your second round with Ryan?" Her smile faltered for the first time, but she pressed on. "He came back to me because he loves me." I tilted my head slightly. "Funny, because he told me you reached out first." The color drained from her cheeks, and for a moment she couldn't find her footing. Ryan's voice came from behind her, sharp with confusion. "What do you mean, she reached out first?" Samantha spun, caught between fight and retreat. The room seemed to quiet around us, music fading beneath the sudden attention. I folded my arms, keeping my voice even. She contacted you, Ryan. Liked your old photos, slid back into your messages, made sure you remembered her. You didn't go looking, she came to you. His face shifted as the truth settled in eyes narrowing on Samantha. Is that true? He asked, his voice low. Her mouth opened, then closed again, no explanation ready this time. Someone near us muttered, "Yikes!" The sound slicing through the silence. The moment was quick, but it was enough. The carefully drawn picture of their reunion cracked in front of everyone. Samantha's eyes darted, searching for an exit that wasn't there, while Ryan stood, stiff betrayal flickering across his face, even as he tried to mask it. The people around us didn't say much, but their glances carried judgment, and whispers followed as the music swelled again. I almost felt a flicker of pity for him but it disappeared as quickly as it came. Because for the first time, everyone saw what I had known all along. He hadn't been chosen, he'd been used. On the drive home, Ethan was quiet at first, letting the night settle. Finally, he glanced at me, his voice calm, but curious. How do you feel? I let out a long breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Lighter, I said. Like I've been carrying a secret I didn't even know was mine to carry, and now it's not mine anymore. His hand reached across the console, not grabbing, just resting near mine, a gesture that asked without demanding. I turned my palm upward, meeting his quietly, and for the first time in weeks, the silence between us felt grounding rather than heavy. That night, lying awake in bed, I thought about everything that had happened, the chaos, the lies, the exhaustion. What struck me most wasn't anger anymore, it was clarity. I didn't need to chase revenge or twist myself into knots to prove my worth. Ryan and Samantha were already unraveling under the weight of their own choices, their own need to perform. My task was simpler, quieter. I only needed to step out of the way and let them collapse on their own. Still, as I closed my eyes and let sleep finally pull me under, I knew something deeper was shifting inside me. I was done being the one left carrying the damage done, being the quiet support while others took without giving. I was ready for more than survival. I was ready to take my life back piece by piece, even if the next step meant facing their chaos head on. The 30th day came faster than I expected. I woke early that morning, moving quietly through the apartment, stacking Ryan's things neatly into boxes by the door. I folded his shirts, even washed them, not from kindness, but from a need to end it properly. I wanted no excuse for him to linger, no reason for him to accuse me of bitterness. By noon, the boxes stood like small walls between us, each one holding what I was finally ready to let go. The rumble of a U-Haul echoed up from the lot, and my chest tightened. Moments later, the door swung open. Ryan entered first, his hands jammed deep in his pockets, his eyes fixed on the floor. Samantha followed with sharp steps, sunglasses perched on her head, though the sky outside was cloudy. She didn't greet me, only scanned the room as if searching for something to claim. "Where's my grandmother's vase?" she demanded. I blinked, then pointed toward the counter. "The blue one. That's mine. I bought it at HomeGoods." She scowled, muttering, but I pulled out the receipt from my folder and laid it flat. "My name says otherwise." Her eyes narrowed, and the performance began. She tore through the boxes, pulling items out as though they were trophies. "This TV ours. The couch, you can't take that from him." My voice stayed even as I reminded her the TV had been bought before Ryan and I met, the couch, a gift from my parents. At one point, she lifted my grandmother's old cookbook, the one passed down through my family. My voice dropped into steel. "Put it down." For the first time, she hesitated. The room went quiet, even Ryan, pausing his scrolling long enough to glance up. She set it back slowly, muttering under her breath. A knock came, then startling all of us. I opened the door to find Ethan holding a takeout bag, his smile soft and steady. Brought lunch, he said, almost sheepish. Figured you might need it. His timing felt deliberate, though I knew it wasn't. Samantha's face twisted when she saw him, her voice rising. You invited him here during this? I set the bag on the counter. He brought me food because he's considerate. Her voice grew sharper. This is humiliating. You brought your rebound into what used to be our home. I folded my arms. Humiliating is cheating on your partner, then expecting to live off their kindness while flaunting your new fling. Her fury turned to Ethan next. How can you even stand yourself? You were supposed to be his best friend. Ethan met her gaze without flinching. His voice was calm but carried an edge. Ryan broke what he had. I just refused to let Liliana suffer for it. For once, Samantha had no retort. Ryan finally looked up, his voice quiet, almost pleading. Samantha, can we just go? We'll be late. She snapped her head toward him. Late for what? He hesitated, his shoulders sinking. My mom's making dinner. The look on her face was priceless shock, then fury, then something close to despair. She had thrown everything into this second chance only to find herself tethered to a man still leaning on his mother for meals. She stormed past me, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled on the wall. Ryan followed, shoulders slumped, not even looking back. The apartment felt different once they were gone. The air seemed lighter, freer. I sank onto the couch, the tension easing out of me in waves. Ethan set the food in front of me, his smile gentle. Hungry? He asked. I nodded, laughing softly. Starving. We ate together in the quiet, the silence finally peaceful instead of heavy. For the first time in weeks, I felt the word freedom settle inside me, like a seed taking root. 3 weeks later, word spread through mutual friends. Ryan had moved in with Samantha at her mother's house. Living together meant rent rules and a 10 o'clock quiet time. Ryan, the aspiring musician, wasn't even allowed to practice at home. Samantha complained online cryptic posts about fake friends and men who can't handle strong women, but no one rushed to console her. The sympathy she once demanded had dried up her once carefully painted love story, now the subject of jokes in private group chats. Ryan's career shrank to unpaid gigs at coffee shops, and since his license had been suspended for tickets, Samantha drove him everywhere. The woman who once bragged about freedom now chauffeured a man she had to babysit. I thought that would be the end of it, but Samantha wasn't finished. One evening, while Ethan and I were walking through the park, my phone buzzed with notifications. She had posted a photo, her hand resting on her stomach, the caption reading, "Sometimes miracles happen." He's going to be an amazing father. My stomach twisted, but not with fear. There was one truth she had overlooked. I typed a reply calm and final, interesting. Considering Ryan and I haven't been intimate in months. Also, I had a procedure last year. Try again. The post vanished within minutes, but not before screenshots spread. Later that night, I heard Ryan ended things on the spot. He hadn't known she was trying to trap him with a lie. A week later, Samantha showed up at my door. Her eyes were red. Mascara streaked her voice, trembling. Liliana, I messed up. Ryan was a mistake. We had 3 good years, you and me. Please, can we try again? Even just as friends. I leaned against the doorframe, watching the wreckage of the girl who once smirked in my living room. You made your choice, Samantha. Now live with it. Her tears spilled faster, desperation leaking into her words. Ethan doesn't really love you. He just wanted what Ryan had. From inside, Ethan's voice carried steady and certain. No, Samantha. I wanted someone who wouldn't throw me away the second an ex texted. I found her. Her face crumpled, and without another word, she turned and disappeared down the hall. These days, life feels quieter, lighter. Ethan and I are taking things slow, no rushing, no games. He listens. He shows up. And when he takes my hand, I don't feel like I'm gripping someone who might slip away. I feel safe, and safe is more precious than I realized. Sometimes karma doesn't need grand gestures or elaborate revenge. Sometimes it's just watching the people who wronged you unravel with their own choices while you quietly rebuild. And as I sat on the balcony one evening, Ethan beside me, the sunset painting the sky in streaks of gold, I understood something simple. In the end, love isn't about who you can't let go of. It's about who never lets go of you. But even with peace settling in, I knew the story wasn't finished. Ryan had a way of circling back when his world collapsed, and Samantha's anger was the kind that never faded quietly. Something told me their unraveling hadn't reached the end yet. It didn't take long for the peace I had found to be tested. For a few weeks, Ryan and Samantha stayed quiet, licking their wounds in the shadow of their own choices. But then the messages started again, indirect, but loud enough to reach me. Ryan posted vague songs online about loyalty and heartbreak, tagging places we used to go. Samantha hinted at betrayal in cryptic captions, her words sharp but aimed more at him than at me. Their perfect picture had already shattered, and now they were trying to gather the shards into something they could still display. Watching it unfold from a distance, I realized I didn't need to lift a finger. They were undoing themselves one post at a time. Still, I wasn't naive. People like them rarely collapsed quietly. A friend from work, Dana, showed me a screenshot one morning at the office. Samantha had written a long comment under a mutual friend's photo, dragging my name into their drama again. She painted me as the manipulative ex who had stolen Ryan's best friend just to spite him. I thanked Dana for showing me, then sat at my desk, breathing slowly, refusing to let the words stick. It was the same old pattern. If she couldn't control the story, she would try to poison it. The difference now was that more people saw through her than sided with her. Ethan stayed steady through it all. He didn't rush me, didn't push me into some grand declaration about where we stood. He was simply there, showing up when he said he would, holding space when I needed quiet, reminding me with small gestures that not all men needed to be begged to care. One evening as we walked along the river, he caught me staring across the water, lost in thought. "They're not your weight to carry anymore," he said softly. The words stayed with me long after, repeating like a mantra when the noise of Ryan and Samantha grew louder online. The breaking point came at another gathering, a casual dinner at a friend's loft downtown. I hadn't planned to go, but Ethan convinced me that avoiding every overlap would only give them more control. The loft was crowded, music, low plates scattered with half-finished appetizers. I was laughing with two coworkers when I felt Samantha at my shoulder. She leaned in, her voice low but edged. "Enjoying your little game. You think he actually wants you? He's just trying to get back at Ryan." I turned, keeping my tone calm. "You reached for Ryan to prove the same thing, didn't you? That you could still take back what you threw away?" Her face reddened, but before she could answer, Ryan appeared behind her. "Stop," he said quickly, but his eyes betrayed him. He wanted the confrontation as much as she did. "You act like you're innocent, Liliana, but you've been parading Ethan around just to hurt me." I folded my arms, steadying my breath. "You hurt yourself, Ryan. You wanted a second chance with someone who already left you once, and now you're shocked she doesn't know what to do with you." The circle around us grew tighter, whispers passing through the group. Samantha bristled, her hands fisting at her sides. "You think you've won, but everyone knows Ethan's just using you." Ethan stepped forward, then his voice cutting through the tension with calm precision. "I don't use people, Samantha. I choose them. And I chose her." The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Ryan looked away, unable to meet my eyes, and Samantha's expression twisted between rage and panic. A few people exchanged looks, and I knew the story they had spun was unraveling faster than they could patch it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Their own cracks were showing, and the crowd could see it clearly. The fight drained from Samantha's posture, and she tugged Ryan toward the door, whispering harshly under her breath. They left without another word, and the room exhaled when the door closed behind them. Later that night, as Ethan and I walked back to my car, the city lights stretching across the pavement, he asked, "Do you regret going?" I shook my head. "No, because now everyone sees what I've known all along. I don't have to defend myself anymore." He squeezed my hand, quiet but firm, and for the first time in months, I felt like the ground under me was steady again. At home, I sat on the balcony watching the night sky. Their world was crumbling piece by piece, and I didn't have to lift a hand to push it faster. They had chosen the lies, the performance, the cruelty. Now the consequences belonged to them. I was finally learning that sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't in what you do, but in what you refuse to do. And as I sat in the quiet, the hum of the city around me, I knew the next steps were no longer about them. They were about me reclaiming my life fully, even if Ryan and Samantha tried to drag me into their chaos one last time. The weeks after that dinner should have been quiet, but quiet wasn't in Ryan or Samantha's nature. Word spread quickly among our circle about the scene at the loft, and for once, the whispers weren't about me. They were about them, how Samantha had been the one to chase Ryan, how he had allowed himself to be pulled back into her orbit, how their arguments had spilled into public spaces where everyone could see. For the first time, their performance didn't hold. People began to step back, tired of being pulled into the storm they created. I noticed it in small ways. Friends who used to defend them now avoided their calls. Social media posts that once gathered dozens of comments sat nearly empty. Even his mother, who had always found some way to cushion his choices, kept her distance. The story they had tried to spin was unraveling, and they were left standing in the wreckage without an audience to applaud them. It wasn't dramatic or sudden. It was a slow falling apart, the kind you can only witness when you step outside of the chaos and let it collapse on its own. Then came the day Ryan returned to the apartment for the last of his things. I had stacked the remaining boxes neatly by the door, determined not to let the moment drag out. He stepped inside, his eyes darting around as though expecting to see pieces of himself still lingering. Samantha trailed behind, her energy sharp and restless. She accused me again of keeping what wasn't mine, pointing at objects that held no connection to her at all. I stayed calm, pulling receipts when needed, refusing to be drawn into her drama. At one point, she lifted a framed photo from my shelf, one of my family at a reunion. "This too," she said flatly. My voice cut sharper than I intended. "That's my blood, Samantha, not yours." Her hand trembled before she set it back. It was then that Ethan arrived, carrying lunch again, his presence steady in the middle of the storm. Samantha's face twisted when she saw him, her words sharp and cruel. She accused him of betrayal, of stealing what wasn't his to take. He looked at her evenly, his voice quiet but strong. Ryan broke what he had. I didn't take anything. I just refused to let Liliana keep suffering for his choices. Ryan didn't defend himself. He kept his eyes down, his silence louder than any excuse he could have given. By the time they left, the air in the apartment felt lighter, as if their chaos had finally been pushed out the door for good. I thought that was the end of it, but the final cracks came quicker than I expected. Through mutual friends, I learned that Ryan and Samantha's relationship was barely holding. Living with her mother had worn them both down. He was restless, angry about the rules and the lack of freedom. She was bitter, angry that he couldn't provide the life she had imagined reclaiming. Their arguments spilled online, then disappeared, leaving only fragments of posts people screenshotted and passed around. Their story had gone from a performance of love to a public unraveling no one wanted to watch anymore. One evening, Samantha made her most desperate move. She posted a photo of herself, her hand on her stomach, the caption hinting at a pregnancy. For a moment, I felt the old dread rise, the familiar knot in my chest. But I remembered the truth that Ryan and I hadn't been together in months, that I had made choices about my own body that made her claim impossible. I typed a single reply beneath her post, calm and final. Interesting, considering Ryan and I haven't been together in months. Also, I had a procedure last year. Try again. The post vanished within minutes, but the damage had already been done. Screenshots traveled faster than any deletion could stop. By the end of the night, Ryan had ended things with her. He hadn't known she was trying to trap him, and the betrayal was too much even for him to excuse. The next week, Samantha showed up at my door. Her eyes were red, her voice shaking, the confidence she once wore stripped away. She begged for another chance, said Ryan had been a mistake, that she had been blinded. She asked if we could start over even as friends. I leaned against the frame, steady in a way I hadn't felt in months. You made your choice, Samantha. Now you live with it. Her tears fell faster, her words desperate. Ethan doesn't love you. He just wanted what Ryan had. Ethan's voice came from inside, calm and sure. No, Samantha. I wanted someone who wouldn't throw me away the second an ex texted. And I found her. Her face crumpled, and without another word, she turned and disappeared down the hall. After that day, the noise faded. Ryan moved quietly in the background, his name surfacing only when someone mentioned he was working odd jobs or playing at small venues no one paid much attention to. Samantha withdrew into silence, her posts gone, her presence barely noticed. They had chased so hard after winning, after proving something neither of them truly believed, only to be left with nothing. And me? I found myself breathing easier, walking through my apartment without looking over my shoulder, sitting on the balcony with Ethan in the evenings, watching the sun dip low and the sky turn gold. It wasn't the kind of ending I had once imagined. There were no grand gestures, no dramatic apologies that fixed what had been broken. There was only the quiet truth of their choices catching up to them and the steady rebuilding of my own life. For the first time, I felt no need to explain myself, no urge to defend my worth to anyone. Justice had been served not by my hands, but by the weight of their own decisions. And as I leaned into the calm of those evenings, I understood that the last piece of this story was not about them anymore. It was about me choosing peace and holding it, even if they tried to claw their way back one final time. When the noise around Ryan and Samantha finally faded, I noticed the change in myself before anything else. My steps through the apartment no longer echoed with tension. My evenings no longer carried that heavy question of who I would have to face. The quiet became something I could trust again, not the silence of being ignored, but the calm of finally being free. It felt like opening a window after a storm and realizing the air is clean again. Ryan drifted further into the background of my life, his name surfacing only in whispers from mutual friends. He played a few odd gigs, moved from place to place, and seemed smaller every time I heard about him. Samantha disappeared even faster. Her voice, once so loud online, was gone, leaving only fragments of a story no one cared to repeat. They had fought so hard to prove a point, only to prove nothing at all. Watching from a distance, I realized the ending I had feared was really just them running out of ways to pretend. Ethan remained steady, the same as he had been from the beginning. We took things slow, building something without performance or fear. He never asked me to forget the past, only reminded me in the way he showed up that I didn't have to keep carrying it. When we sat together on the balcony at dusk, his hand wrapped around mine. I didn't feel like I was holding on for dear life. I felt like I was resting safe and seen in a way I hadn't realized I was missing. Sometimes I thought back to the girl I had been before it all cracked open, the one who believed loyalty meant sacrificing until someone else was strong enough to give back. I wanted to reach for her to tell her she wasn't invisible, that the way she carried everyone else didn't make her unworthy of being carried in return. That lesson came at a cost, but it came, and I will not forget it. Justice, I learned, doesn't always arrive with noise or spectacle. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in the way people undo themselves with their own choices, while you step quietly into a new chapter. Dignity doesn't always mean fighting louder. It can mean walking away certain of who you are, while those who wronged you reveal themselves for what they are. Now when I sit with the people who matter, neighbors who care enough to ask, friends who show up, Ethan, who listens without needing me to prove my worth, I understand that peace is not something given. It is something chosen. And I choose it every day. Before we close, I'd love to know what part of this journey spoke most to you. Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you'd like to hear more stories of resilience and quiet justice, you'll always find them here.